Chasing hot YouTube topics in an attempt to bolster my viewer count? I've never really gotten into that kind of thing. If you've clicked on this video, you have no doubt seen every top tier YouTube channel do their video of the Ed Sheeran versus Marvin Gaye court case. They've done videos where they're set behind pianos and they've put up fancy graphics of chord changes, and those are cool, but I'm going to do something a little better. I wanted to cover this subject, but it really has been done to death. But it's always important to have interesting friends, and I have a few. So I have a friend who is a big-time trial lawyer who has actually litigated cases just like these. His name is Stephen P. New, and this is my interview with him. And I think I'm going to be able to bring out some more insight that just a regular music YouTuber can sitting behind a piano. So I hope you all like it. Stephen P. New, welcome to Junk Drummer TV. How are you doing, brother?
Well, how are you doing, brother? Good to see you, man.
Man, I haven't seen you in a while. What's great about being a music commentator with a lawyer friend is every YouTube music commentator has had a video that is breaking down this Ed Sheeran versus Marvin Gaye. It's actually not Marvin Gaye, it's the other writer. I'm not sure if Marvin Gaye's estate is involved in it. Yeah, Ed Townsend.
No, right.
And this is going to be what they have called the music copyright trial of the century. Now, you're not a musician. You raised one. I know you're a big music fan. I know that you own a Paul McCartney bass, and you've been keeping up with this. Now, when you're explaining this on this video, Steve, I want you to remember you're being watched by dumb drummers and even dumber guitar players. So keep it like that. Now, I'm going to start out just using your terminology. And I know that you've done a lot of trademark and copyright stuff. And I know that you have like a sports agency and you do NILs. When it's a widget, you always say widgets, right? If it's a widget, this is very easy. You've made this widget that is basically this widget. You've infringed on my copyright. This seems like a very abstract case to make if you're the Ed Townsend lawyers. What do you think about that?
Actually, not. I just resolved one of these kinds of cases. It had to do with the music from a Broadway musical, and the musical centered on the stage adaptation of Homer Hickam's book, Rocket Boys. And so, without getting into too much of the detail there, these musicians and artists from the New Jersey area, all of whom are Juilliard trained, successful on Broadway, wrote the music for what would be Rocket Boys, the musical. And then Universal took the position that because it owned the rights to the movie, that it also owned the rights to do a stage adaptation. And there was another group of musicians out of Chicago who came together and put together another musical, which we alleged a lot of the music ripped off my client's music.
Oh.
And so one thing that your listeners, your viewers may or may not know is that every piece of music has a common law copyright, which means that if you write a piece of music, whether you go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office and register your sheet music or register snippets of the sound of it, by common law, you have a common law copyright in the music that you create. All right. And you strengthen your copyright claim and the defensibility of it if you also then take your sheet music, snippet of your music and that kind of stuff and register it with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. What's so interesting about Let's Get It On is that copyright laws changed in 1978, and pre-1978 only certain things had to be registered with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. In other words, to say this is what this song is, and it belongs to me. I have the copyright on it, in the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And so that's what we're dealing with here. The allegations in the Ed Sheeran estate of Ed Townsend lawsuit is that the underlying musical composition, melodies, chords, but not the lyrics, are what's at issue here, Steve. And there's a lot of similar type lawsuits that have been brought, but I think everyone is watching this because with the advent of TikTok and things like that, these mashups are getting more and more. And I can speak to this. I saw a video the other day where Madonna performing Express Yourself straight up went into Born This Way by Lady Gaga. Was identical. She didn't have to change anything. She just started singing different lyrics to her 1989 hit Express Yourself. And everybody just thought that was kind of her tongue-in-cheek way of letting Gaga know that she knows.
So that's getting down into the nuts and bolts of it. The chord progression is the same, but that chord progression, which is drummers, bear with me, it's a 1 flat 3 4 5. That chord progression is very, very common. There's thousands of, chord progressions can become a trope in songwriting, right? So, and the vibe is obviously the same. It's a sexy soul pop song. It's obviously, when you hear the Ed Sheeran verse, because it's not the chorus, the big major difference between the two is Marvin Gaye's is the same vamp all the way through. Ed Sheeran has a big chorus that is obviously not even close to, let's get it on. The drum groove is one note difference. Like the drum groove on Ed Sheeran's is 1, 2, and 4, and Marvin Gaye has a 1, 2, and 4, right? So I know that drum beats aren't copyrighted. You can ask Kid Rock ripping off the beginning of Smells Like Teen Spirit, right? You can't really copyright a drum part. So is this...
Which Dave Grohl, interestingly, says that he ripped off from the Gap Band, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Dave Grohl admits he ripped off the Gap Band, and the drummer from the Gap Band's like, yeah, I knew you were doing it when I heard it.
Well, Buddy Rich has that very famous saying, a good musician never gets caught stealing. Right. So at the heart of this, is this going to, down the road, will a chord progression be able to be copyrighted, and then now another song can't have that exact chord progression? Like how?
I think really that's what's at issue here. And let me talk a little about the testimony, if I can,
please,
because I don't know that Ed Sheeran's lawyers are the best lawyers that I've seen do this. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If they were smart, they'd make that argument. But Ed Sheeran's co-writer apparently took the stand today and said, oh, when we were writing this song, we didn't think that it was Marvin Gaye. We thought it was a Van Morrison song.
So their defense is they ripped off another song?
Yes. I don't think that's the best legal defense that you could put forth, because the jury's got to be like, what the heck? You just admitted you're ripping off Tupelo Honey or something from Van Morrison. So why would we believe you, with you two people being the only two people in the room, that you weren't also ripping off Marvin Gaye? So the testimony has been a little ridiculous. I think with Ed Sheeran playing his guitar, he could probably explain away hey, I've done similar mashups, because everybody's seen the fan shot video where he mashed up Let's Get It On, Thinking Out Loud. And I think that's really damning evidence. So I hope Ed Sheeran's team has a musicologist as strong as the one that Townsend's estate has, which gets into this. But to your point, Steve, it could be really dangerous for songwriters in the future if they're even halfway close. You know, there's a lot of I find this particular part of the law very interesting, just because I am such a music guy. I don't know how it couldn't play a cassette player, but I love music. I love what it does for my soul. Rod Stewart, he wrote the song "Forever Young" and put it on the Downtown Train album in 1989 or 90. He just waved the flag. It sounds nothing like Bob Dylan's "Forever Young," but to avoid the fight, he gave Dylan a songwriting credit. And so, just to give a little bit of the background and history, one of the first most famous cases, "He's So Fine," the chiffons, or whichever person owned the rights to the chiffons, "He's So Fine," probably some record executive or something that had cheated those young ladies out of their rights to that music. They sued George Harrison for "My Sweet Lord." And I don't think "He's So Fine" sounds anything like "My Sweet Lord," but George Harrison, being a nice guy, that he was, the nicest Beatle probably, he settled that case out of court. There is an interesting case that's gone on over the last few years. It's on appeal now, I believe. "Stairway to Heaven," a band that opened for Led Zeppelin or vice versa, called Spirit. And they had a song that sounded an awful lot like the opening parts of "Stairway to Heaven." Of course, while on the topic of Marvin Gaye, Robin Thicke and the other guy that sings "Happy," Pharrell, they lost the case to Marvin Gaye's estate on "Got to Give It Up," saying that Blurred Lines ripped it off, and the Gaye estate won that case. And I think, it's just my personal opinion, I think "Thinking Out Loud," just on that chord progression, sounds, and that one snippet sounds more like "Let's Get It On" than Blurred Lines sounded like "Got to Give It Up."
So let me get into the nuts and bolts of something that we talk about. I'm a songwriter as well, and I completely ripped off a song from the band leader that I was in. He had this line about putting a woman on the shelf, and I wrote that song and didn't realize it. If it is proven that Ed Sheeran did this without malice, and it was just parallel thinking, is he still liable, I guess is the right word for it? If they can prove that, like, he didn't mean to do it, does that exonerate him from the law?
No, there is an intent element here. I mean, what the jury is going to be asked is, are these two works of art dissimilar enough?
Okay, so even if like it's true that Ed Sheeran didn't try to do that, he can still be held accountable because that could be a possibility. It's something a lot of the commentators that talk about this, and it's like it's a possibility that they just came up with the same thing.
And that was George Harrison's kind of defense in the "My Sweet Lord" case. Was it, I lifted that, I did it intentionally, I subconsciously, I had that da da da, my
with no malice,
Lord,
with no
malice. But intent isn't an element for copyright infringement. I don't have to prove, and didn't in the case that we just resolved a couple of months ago. I didn't have to prove that those writers intended to rip my works off. I only had to prove that they had access to it, which they did. Universal had been monitoring Homer's stage play, and that they had an opportunity, and that so much of it matched such that it couldn't be argued that it would be just coincidence.
And unfortunately for Ed Sheeran, Let's Get It On has been heard by the whole population of the world. So there was no way that he was going to say,
years.
yeah,
Right.
I not heard that song. I couldn't have done that. Something that's so interesting is like it's the vibe of it. You know, the drum part is exactly the same. The key, the chord changes are the same. The keys are different, but the chord changes are the same. If you know anything about music theory, that's the same chords. But the vibe of it. So it's almost like we're trying to copyright because it's obviously a sexy song, right? It's a song to a woman. And you know, it's he's talking about let's getting it on
Right.
in another way. So
No,
it's
that's
almost
not
like in a vibe
copywritten.
copyright. Okay.
And that's that whole thing about it being a pre-1978 song. There's no allegation about the lyrics being ripped off, or vibe isn't really a part of this from the legal standpoint. Now, the common sense part of it, I think jurors get. And thing I've said, I've done 54, 55 jury trials, and I've always ended it on, ladies and gentlemen, judge didn't tell you to check your common sense at the door. You all know what's going on here. Apply your common sense to everything you've heard at this trial over the last week or 2 weeks or month, or whatever. So, if I'm the estate for Ed Townsend, I tell the jury to apply their common sense. This is a couple of sexy songs, same chord progression, and yeah, we brought a musicologist, but you guys don't need a musicologist. Just find it in your soul and listen to these two songs, and you know that we're right. And we'll come back in a couple of months and we'll have a damages trial. That's what I would argue. But then on the other side, I really hope for Ed Sheeran's sake that he has a better music expert than his co-writer, who said, I really thought we were ripping off Van Morrison.
I didn't know that happened. Oh no. So, full disclosure, I'm on another podcast with Steve, and we do these very similar law videos as it pertains to pro wrestling. And in those videos, I always try to get you to role play. If you're Ed Sheeran's lawyer, wouldn't it be easier to just have given the credit and not go through all of this, but also remembering that song is multi-platinum, many millions has been made off that song. That song, his what's his song again? Yeah, I think that song is going to be played at every wedding of every Zoomer and millennial here on out. It's kind of like the Let's Get It On of 21st century. If you're his lawyer and seeing what you're up against, do you risk the trial, or do you just say, hey, here's a piece of the song?
I believe it's the client's.
But what would you as a lawyer, what would you?
I would be recommending Ed Sheeran to make some resolution of this. That would include, some small piece. And I have to think that these parties engaged in some pretty serious settlement negotiations. Probably the estate of Ed Townsend. Ed Townsend's kids and grandkids are probably thinking, this is our chance to cash in. Mm-hmm. And, Sheeran doesn't want to settle. He doesn't believe he's done anything wrong, but his lawyers are probably telling him there would be an amount and a co-credit or something that if you could write them a check, $10 million, whatever, and give Townsend and Marvin Gaye a credit, but no money in the future, we can do that. 10 million, 20 million, whatever. It tells me that the Townsend's bar is way, way, way high, Steve. But I would recommend, if I were representing Ed Sheeran, I would have hoped that we could have resolved this before getting here without all of this ugliness, because unfortunately for Ed Sheeran, I don't think he ever outlives this. And also, Sheeran said today, if the plaintiffs win, he's done. That he's leaving music. He's not. He called the music expert a fraud and a liar. He said, I don't know how he got qualified as an expert, which is really the judge's call, not Ed Sheeran's call. And he said if the plaintiffs win, he's done with the music industry.
See, that's something else that I don't think has been talked about. There's an artistic ego. You know, we're artists. We want to believe that we're being 1000% creative. And as Geddy Lee said, we all stand on the shoulders of the people that we are influenced by. You just hope that your creativity stands out, steps out in front of what all of your influences are. And obviously, Ed Sheeran is a songwriter of the last 50 years, which means you're influenced by Marvin Gaye because he's written some of the most seminal works of the 20th century. Before we go, now, if the 1978 law change, if this song was, if Let's Get It On was recorded after 1978, would this be a different trial?
Not really. They could have just copywritten more the song. Maybe not so much vibe, but I think they're able under the post 1978 copyright laws to have copywritten more than what they were able to put and really needed to put on file with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office pre 1978.
Okay, one last question, and because you're one of my best friends, I think I know the answer. If you are a lawyer, which side of the table do you want to be on in this case?
I probably would want to be on Ed Sheeran's.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to say Ed Townsend.
No, I think because it's the tougher case, and I think if you win, you get more kudos. You know, if you're able to pull this back out of the belly of the beast for a guy like Ed Sheeran, then I think you make your bones. And I think from now on, every one of these kinds of cases, you're going to be somebody's first call.
Oh, the gravitas that comes with saving Ed Sheeran as an artist. Yeah, I hear you. I was thinking just monetarily. I was thinking monetarily it would be the Ed Townsend
I would want to be the go-to guy for one of these kinds of cases for artists who are still around and still relevant and that will tell all of his artist buddies like Taylor Swift and Harry Styles, who will no doubt find themselves in similar snares here in a few years.
Well, I know because I know some of your clients and a lot of his clients, and we're not going to talk about. I know that you have a passion for making sure that people get what they deserve and what they earned, right? So, I mean,
right.
He's actually one of the good lawyers out there. I swear, he's one of the good ones. So, and I'll end it with this. Ed Sheeran, we've all done it. Everyone's done it. Hell, John Fogerty got sued for sounding like John Fogerty, which is, I think, the worst case scenario of the music business. If you ever wanted, and I've always said I've had to deal with lawyers in the music business. If you're having to deal with a lawyer in the music business, it's either a really good day or it's a really awful day. It's not a neutral day when a musician has to talk to a lawyer. Stephen P. New, thank you for coming on Junk Drummer TV, sir, and trying to clear up some of all this business. And I'll end it with this. I'll give you the last word. And I know that you like to armchair court cases when there are high level court cases going on. We talk about them. What is your prediction?
My prediction is it's a plaintiff's verdict on liability on did Ed Sheeran copy the composition. I think it gets settled confidentially before the damages phase.
So there would be a second part to this. So if Ed Sheeran was found guilty, I guess, are you found guilty? Is it guilty? Liable. So it's less than guilty.
Copyright infringement.
Okay, so it's a libel. So then they would have to do a whole other court case to find out how.
It's a damages trial at that point.
I know lawyers love a good damages trial.
Well, yeah, which is why I mean, if you can ever get judgment on liability without having to prove it to a jury, and you only have a damages trial. Those are the best ones when you're talking about how much. But my prediction is plaintiff's verdict on liability. Be wrong, but I don't think that I am. And then settlement on the damages portion that we'll never know what it is.
So Ed's not going to want to have to go through this again.
Right. I don't think Ed Sheeran's going to want to sit there, and God forbid there would be a monstrous plaintiff's verdict. I don't think Ed Sheeran's going to want to be sitting there listening to that.
Now, and I'm trying to get you out of here, but if you're Van Morrison's lawyer, do you start making phone calls?
Yeah. Well, I guess you wait and see how Ed Townsend's trial goes. And if there's a plaintiff's verdict on that, then you take the testimony of the co-writer, whatever her name was, and say, hey, write me a check too there while you're at it, pal.
As Stephen P. knew when it comes to suing, giddy up. Thank you very much for being on Junk Driver TV, Steve. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks, Steve.